Chapter 76 The Scheme of Using One Tiger to Devour Another, Part 1. The soft clinking of cutlery against the tableware, accompanied by the sound of wine dissipating, led Gordon to raise his glass first and say, "Congratulations on your new home." Bruce, Harvey, Schiller, and Victor all raised their glasses and clinked them together. Schiller took a sip of his drink. The slightly spicy liquid sent a warm feeling through his chest as he swallowed it. The firelight from the fireplace shone on his glass like a burning flame. "You should buy a house," Harvey said. "I told you no one should live in a faculty apartment for so long. There's not even a coffee machine there. I only stayed there for 2 nights and my back was aching from the bed frame." "I think it's pretty good," Victor said. "Gotham University's facilities are quite good, though of course they can't compare to a manor like this. I hope you can reserve a room for me here." "You're welcome anytime." Schiller raised his glass to him, and Bruce, while cutting his steak with a knife, said, "You should reserve a room for both of us. After all, I've already reserved rooms for you at Wayne Manor." "That's enough," Schiller said. "God bless me so I can buy a large estate in my lifetime." "I'd be happy to reserve a room for each of you," Gordon said, eating a sausage. "How have you been lately? You should be almost done saving up, right?" Harvey asked him. "Recent income has declined a bit, but it's still not bad." Gordon picked up a napkin to wipe his mouth, then continued. "The Godfather hasn't made any moves yet, but the other gangs are eager to try. This is probably just the calm before the storm." "You must let me know when you've saved enough money," Schiller said, tapping his knife lightly with his fork. "What's wrong?" "It's nothing. I just thought I could help you with your apartment selection. After all, I looked at a lot of information before I bought my own house." "That's perfect. I was just wondering which building to buy. What do you think of Pelican Community?" "Actually, I prefer Jasmine End, but considering we might have a child in the future, it's a bit small and doesn't have a nursery." "Have you thought about 9th Avenue? How about coming to be my neighbor?" Harvey asked him with a smile. "Good heavens, that's so far away, and most of the people living there are probably bachelors like you, right?" Schiller, who was picking up his glass to drink, let out a tisk sound. Gordon looked at him with some confusion, and Schiller laughed and said, "You've been too busy lately to know about something this big. What's wrong?" Gordon glanced at Harvey and said, "What did I miss? Isn't he a bachelor now?" Victor asked, "You and Christine are officially dating? Then you'd better be discreet at school. You know, there are almost as many girls who are interested in you as there are boys who are interested in her." "Okay, it happened last week," Harvey said with a shrug. Bruce looked at him in surprise and said, "Really? My God, you've already won over the sexiest and prettiest girl in all of Gotham University so quickly. I thought you were just an old academic." Schiller tapped the edge of his plate lightly with his fork again, and then said, "I hope you're not implying anything. Are you sitting here with me at this table because you only got 69 on your final exam?" Everyone laughed. The fireplace roared, and the reflections of the metal cutlery on the table mirrored each other, emitting soft halos of light. When the light overlapped, the whole room seemed to be illuminated. After dinner, the group sat on the sofa in front of the fireplace. Harvey, slightly drunk, said, "What is this? Our bachelor night? Gordon's getting married too, and we can still have this kind of commotion before he does. I'm leaving now." Victor had already put on his coat and hat. Schiller turned to look at him and said, "Take that bag by the door. There are 2 bottles of wine and a pack of cigars in there." "Oh, thank you. How could you bear to give me all these good Cuban goods?" Victor asked with a smile as he opened the bag. "I remember you mentioned that a couple of days ago was your wedding anniversary with your wife." "Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't know," Bruce said. "Professor Frith, I'll send the gift to your office tomorrow." No need to be so polite." Victor smiled and said, "In fact, I'm already very happy that you understand me." Victor was speaking from the heart. After all, freezing his wife in a cryogenic chamber was a truly terrifying idea. He didn't expect anyone to understand his crazy actions. The best people who had heard about it before could offer was advice that everyone experiences birth, aging, sickness, and death, and to take it easy. However, most of the new friends he made in Gotham were very tolerant of this, and they did not shy away from bringing it up. In fact, Victor did not like other people looking at him with pity and avoiding him whenever his marriage and family situation were mentioned, as it made him feel like a jinx. But his friends were different. It was as if his wife was just a minor illness and in the hospital. They would always remember her, which comforted Victor. It was as if his wife was really just hospitalized for a common illness and would recover soon. After Victor left, Gordon left quickly as well. Bruce leaned back on the sofa and said, "See? These are all busy people. Only a few of us idle guys, can stay here and get drunk all night. Actually, it's just you, Mr. Richest Man. I still have to revise my thesis later, and Harvey has a lawsuit to write. It's just you, this idle, empty-headed tycoon." Bruce leaned back on the sofa with his eyes closed. He waved his hand and stopped talking, clearly a little drunk. Harvey put on his coat and said, "I'll take him home. I don't want him to get really drunk here. He has a cell phone in his pocket. Find it and call his butler. Ask him to send a helicopter to pick you up. Don't drive. In Gotham, what's drunk driving? I can even drive at 120 mph. Bruce mumbled, Yes, our genius race car driver." After Harvey helped Bruce away, Schiller walked to the other side of the living room, picked up the phone receiver, and started dialing. Soon, the lights in the manor gradually went out, and Gotham's night fell into deep darkness once again. The next day, Gotham University's president, Selden, stood in his office with his arms crossed and said in a puzzled tone, "You mean, Professor Rodriguez is injured and hospitalized? Well then, send a colleague to visit him." In the afternoon, Schiller, lying in his hospital bed, accepted the flowers from Anna and said, "Oh, thank you. I'm so grateful." He was about to continue speaking when Gordon rushed in. Seeing that there were outsiders present, he hesitated for a moment. After Anna left, Gordon looked around the room. This was a VIP ward in Gotham City Central Hospital, a private room with luxurious furnishings. Schiller was lying on the bed, covered with a blanket, and there was nothing unusual about his appearance. Gordon walked over, hands on his hips, and said, "I heard you were attacked last night. Damn, I should have stayed out later." Schiller chuckled, seemingly unconcerned. Gordon said, "You can still laugh? You knew beforehand that those guys from Metropolis were likely after you, yet you weren't on guard and let them succeed. Where are you injured? An organ or a bone?" Then, quite annoyed, he said, "I wonder where that Batman went. If he had stayed with you, this wouldn't have happened. You really have a lot of faith in him, but I don't want him to stay here overnight. If his butler comes knocking, he'll be more terrifying than anyone else." Honestly, Gordon looked Schiller up and down. "You're really injured? I can't tell at all." He glanced at his watch and said, "Besides, we left in the middle of the night, and it's only a little past 7 a.m. now. Your wound healed so quickly? Even if it was just a knife wound, it would take at least 10 hours to heal, right? Or is it that the medical technology at the Central Hospital has become so advanced?" Schiller waved to him, signaling him to calm down, then threw off the covers and sat up, standing directly off the bed. He walked to the window and stretched, while Gordon stared wide-eyed at his fluid and effortless movements as if nothing had happened. "Damn it! You're not hurt at all," Gordon shouted. "I rushed over here as soon as I got the news." "I'm very touched," Schiller said. "Your old pickup truck was able to drive from the police station to the hospital in just 20 minutes. Did you put a propeller or something on it?" "I told you. I got first place in my driving course at the police academy." Then Gordon shook his head and said, "Is that the point? The point isn't why you faked being sick? You've finally had enough of those students at Gotham University?" "Of course not." Okay, a little, but that's not the point. Do you know how I got this news? This morning, the police station was filled with wailing and screaming because they heard that Arkham Psychiatric Hospital was going to temporarily close due to a lack of attending physicians. I've never seen them so sad. Yes, the closure of Arkham Psychiatric Hospital is a tragedy that affects more than just the police. Gordon frowned. He wasn't stupid. After thinking for a moment, he said, "The gangsters won't give up so easily. They've tasted the sweetness of this industry." "That's right. They're probably more anxious than you are right now. After all, you've almost saved enough money, and your goal is just to buy an apartment. But it's different for them. Why are you doing this? What's the benefit of keeping them hanging?" "I'm injured, and the mental hospital won't open. They're about to lose what they've got their hands on." "So why was I injured? Why do you want to frame those people in Metropolis?" Gordon finally understood. "You want to use these gangs to eliminate them. Once they find out that you were attacked by those people in Metropolis, and that they are the culprits behind the mental hospital's closure, they will definitely try to find out who they are and then kill them." Gordon paced around the room, saying as he walked, "After running for so long, Many people have spent time and effort putting their businesses into mental hospitals, and they're not going to give up now. It's like the last step in baking a pizza. They're not going to stop. Now that you're sick, they'll definitely find all sorts of ways to find out what happened. The police already know who did it, so there's no reason why those gang leaders wouldn't know. But how can you be so sure they'll go after those people from Metropolis, instead of trying to replace you with someone else like before? You're injured, but that doesn't mean the mental hospital has to close down. They don't know this business is part of your plan. They might just think, since the attending physician is sick, why not just replace him? They don't know, but Falcone does, and that's enough. Chapter 77: The Scheme of Using One Tiger to Devour Another, Part 2. I knew it. Ha, who do they think they are? Just because the Godfather is old, they can do whatever they want? I can only say that they don't want to die sooner. In a bar in the East End, a bearded man with a cigar, the second in command of the Coca gang, was holding a glass of whiskey. The bartender brought him a sip of whiskey, then a puff of his cigar, exhaling smoke as he said, "They didn't experience that era. They don't understand. All the Godfather wants is sincerity." He tapped the bar counter with his finger and emphasized, "He's telling us that if we want a piece of the pie, we have to do what he says. Just like he did many years ago, how he gathered the entire Gotham gang and then established the 12 families. Those greenhorns will never understand." The man opposite him was thin, not as burly as him, and his face was pale and gloomy. He was the manager of this bar and a member of the Comet Gang, one of the 4 big bosses on Elizabeth Street. He smoked a cigarette and said, "I've heard my boss say that, our big boss was the first boss on Elizabeth Street. He used to work under the Godfather. Those bastards from Metropolis think they've provoked the Godfather, and that the Godfather's silence for the time being means he's afraid of them. They're so naive. The Godfather won't take action himself. He didn't need to take matters into his own hands," the bearded man said. "Gotham is no longer the place where the big bosses needed to get out there and fire the shots. He's telling these gangsters that even though he's old, as long as he's alive, he'll always be the underground king of Gotham," Skinny said. "The attending physician is injured, so the mental hospital has to close down? Only those greenhorns who've just started out would believe that. Damn attending physician. What kind of attending physician is needed there? Go and cure that rooster-haired guy on the next street from his stinky habit of trembling at the sight of eggs." The skinny man and those around him burst into laughter. The bartender, wiping the glasses, said, "Where can't you find a doctor? I think I could do it too. It's just a matter of doing the accounting and writing medical records. What patients do you need to treat? That's why I said it's all nonsense." The Godfather deliberately cut off this business so that the gangsters would know that if they wanted to make money with him, they had to obediently help him deal with his enemies, or they could forget about making any money. The bearded man took a sip of his drink, grinned, and continued, "The Godfather did just that many years ago. He took 2 poppy plantations and threatened the gangsters in the downstream industry to take care of the biggest troublemaker at the time, that Anthony. That was a huge deal. If they could really get their hands on the products from those 2 plantations, they would definitely make a fortune. As you all know, the Frenchman's head was on the Godfather's desk the very next day. They won't live much longer," the skinny man said grimly. "The sissies of Metropolis should go back to their nests and stay out of Gotham's business." Go back? They probably won't have a chance to go back. They're doomed. Meanwhile, Schiller, in the hospital, said on the phone, "Yes, thank you for your concern. I'm fine. Yes, I just need to rest. I really didn't expect this." He had just hung up the phone when the nurse came in with a large bouquet of flowers and said, "It looks like it was sent by the Lauren family. Leave it there, thank you. And could you please take these bouquets with you? They're getting a little stale." The nurse tidied up the area around the bed, which was covered with flowers and gifts from various mafia families. She couldn't help but recall what they had said in their chat in the corridor. Even if the Godfather were sick, there wouldn't necessarily be such a big fuss. Schiller was in a good mood. He was on paid leave, and in the past 2 days he had collected dozens of kilograms of various expensive wines and cigars. He didn't know which little genius had spread the word that he liked to smoke cigars. So now his estate was filled with various expensive cigars worth millions. The idea of faking illness actually came from a sudden flash of inspiration he had one morning. In fact, Schiller didn't need anyone to specifically remind him. He knew that the people coming to the Metropolitan were definitely there for him. Deathstroke had previously accepted money from his employer to kill him, but he was persuaded to turn back. The person behind the scenes would certainly not let it go so easily. Perhaps because Deathstroke ran away with the job, he did not choose to hire any well-known solo assassins, but instead found a gang of thugs from somewhere, wanting to fight as a team. Logically, Schiller should have started a defensive battle with them at this point. After all, given the nature of Gotham City, calling the police would be a waste of time. The enemy is in the shadows while he is in the open. All Schiller can do is probably spend a lot of money to hire bodyguards or find someone to protect him 24 hours a day. Even if Schiller could use the gray fog to locate them, he would still have to be extremely careful to catch and kill any of the lone individuals among them. But that would be too stupid, Schiller thought. He didn't want to put himself on the same level as those bandits and be defeated by them with their rich experience. If the person behind the scenes could afford to hire Deathstroke, then the gang of thugs he recruited must be some kind of small fry. They must have some skill, otherwise they wouldn't have been able to kill the Godfather's men as soon as they arrived in Gotham. Living in constant fear? Guarding against assassination attempts at any moment? Schiller would never do that. So, after notifying Falcone, Schiller was immediately injured, and quite badly so. The question is, it means I need a long period of rest. The question is, it means I'm in a bad mood and my mind isn't working properly. It doesn't matter that he is injured, but the mental hospital will also have to close down because it has no attending physician. Then who among these gang leaders will be able to sit still? The mental hospital has been operating for so long, and the first few people to try it out have made a fortune. Those who followed later are working hard to expand their businesses. They have spent a lot of time and money on this, and they are about to reap the rewards, but then their efforts are cut off. How could they be happy about that? Those who had already made money were even less willing. They didn't have to risk being shot. They just needed to negotiate a profit-sharing agreement with Schiller and could sit back and collect their money. Who wouldn't want to do something so easy? They had already made a lot of money and wanted to make even more. If they stopped operating now, wouldn't that be a loss? On the first day, the mental hospital announced its closure. All the phone lines were ringing off the hook, including Bruce's. During the time Schiller returned to Gotham University, Bruce was in charge of the entire hospital. Although Schiller did not discuss his plans with Bruce beforehand, Bruce knew who Batman was and understood Schiller's intentions in less than a few seconds. So the world's richest man immediately launched into a discussion, and all the gang leaders who called him to subtly inquire about the situation only received Bruce's 3 idiotic responses. I don't know. I'm not sure. And I don't understand. I'm just a rich man with nothing to do and an empty head. What's the point of asking me? You might as well ask Evans. Evans was doing well at the hospital. After all, he was the Godfather's son and naturally aligned himself with these mob bosses. So, the leaders had no choice but to call Evans again. Evans also expressed his predicament, saying that he could only tell the gang leaders that it was his father's decision and he couldn't interfere. Once this was said, the gang leaders all understood. Assassination and injury? It was just another of the Godfather's tricks. They weren't stupid. They knew this was the Godfather warning them. If the Godfather lost face, no one would be any better off. Those people from the metropolis dare to disregard Gotham's rules like this, while everyone else just stands by and watches. Then none of US can expect to make any money. The gang leaders felt that this was indeed the Godfather warning them. If they still wanted to share the spoils, they had to show some sincerity. Wherever he pointed, they had to fight. After weighing the options, the gang leaders realized that these so-called guests from the metropolis were clearly just scum from the metropolis. They ordered everyone to find them immediately, and once found, to chop them up. They didn't need to see them alive, just their corpses. In order to continue their lucrative business at the mental hospital, the gang leaders were practically digging 3 feet into the ground to find the group of people from the metropolis. There's no need to elaborate on how ruthless the Gotham gangs are, especially when this matter threatens their real interests. Everyone involved is frantically searching for and attacking the outsiders. Originally, this group of people had already found their target, Schiller, within a few days of entering the metropolis. They did not take action at that time, but because they were confident in themselves, they wanted to arrange the situation so that it was foolproof before making their move. Schiller moved out of Gotham University, and they were almost at the end of the operation when Schiller was suddenly injured before they could even make a move. What? He was attacked by outsiders in Metropolis? Outsiders in Metropolis? Aren't those us? We didn't. The thug from the Metropolis felt like he'd eaten shit. He'd been in the business for so many years and had encountered all sorts of strange things. But this was the first time he'd ever been scammed. We haven't even done anything yet. He collapsed on his own. What does it have to do with us? However, this matter is clearly inexplicable. If you're looking for evidence to prove they laid a hand on someone, That's easy to find. But they have to prove they didn't lay a hand on someone, and now that person is in the hospital, what else can they say? Whoever the victim says is the one who did it. Besides, even if they weren't the ones who did it, the Godfather said so, so it is. They had already found a location to plant the bomb near Schiller's estate and had even found a good spot nearby to stake out the place, intending to lure Schiller there. But now, all the gangs in Gotham were looking for them, and their original stakeout location had been discovered, forcing them to move to a different location. Although they initially caught the Godfather off guard, it was still a sneak attack. In the past few days, they have witnessed firsthand how the Gotham gangs fought each other with the firepower of a small war. Where in the metropolis can you find such a spectacle? Now these gangs are no longer fighting amongst themselves, but instead have united to fight them. Look at those armored vehicles with rows of machine guns, rocket launchers for every soldier, and even some crazy person who brought in several rocket artillery vehicles. Who wouldn't feel uneasy in that situation? You'd feel numb if you stomped on them. So now it's these outsiders who are running around everywhere. Gotham's gangs don't seem to want to catch them at all. The places where they were hiding were found by these gangs, and they were immediately bombarded with rocket launchers. They don't want the survivors, they just want the corpses, even if they're not completely intact. When it comes to the ruthlessness of gangsters, no city in the world can compare to Gotham. And when these ruthless gangsters unite to attack a single target, the resulting tragedy for that target is unimaginable. The losses caused by frequently changing bases were not only minor troubles such as the inability to replenish supplies and store daily necessities, but more importantly, once they were caught and came looking for them, they had to have someone cover their retreat. After several relocations, they had already lost several good men, and the entire group had been reduced from more than a dozen people to just a few. They wanted to abandon the mission and run away, but the Gotham gangs wouldn't give them that chance. No one knows who spread the rumor, but whoever can hand over this pledge of loyalty first will get the biggest slice of the pie. With profit in mind, of course, they dare to be the first. The gangsters are all crazy about getting them to claim credit and rewards. Chapter 78: The Scheme of Using One Tiger to Devour Another, Part 2. Of course, it's impossible to expect the entire Gotham to be completely under the Godfather's command. Gotham has no shortage of rebellious troublemakers, and right now, Sal Maroni is one of the best among them. Maroni is an ambitious man, as evidenced by the names he gave his gangs. In Gotham, not all gangs can be named after surnames. Initially, only the Falcone family could do so, and now the 12 Falcone families are all named after surnames. Apart from them, the other smaller gangs are named after their code names. In Gotham, it's a great honor to name a gang after yourself, because Falcone was the first to do so and achieved unparalleled success. By doing this, Maroni demonstrated that from the very beginning, he harbored the ambition to challenge the Godfather. After the Red Crow gang was wiped out, Maroni ate most of its remains and also destroyed another gang that had been his rival. He was now virtually invincible on that main street in the East District. He certainly wanted to go further, especially since he knew that the Godfather was getting old and the transition of the Falcone family was the best opportunity to make his move. Falcone entrusted many of his businesses to Evans. Although Evans was also very smart, he lacked the experience and ruthlessness of the old Godfather. The two bartenders who were attacked by the outsiders in the metropolis were from the two bars that Evans wanted to reform. Maroni keenly sensed from this incident the fact that the Godfather was running out of successors. Young Falcone was still too inexperienced. He wanted to reform, but he didn't have the ruthless and decisive methods of the old Godfather. He wanted to maintain stability, but he didn't have enough experience. Maroni thought that this was the perfect time to deliver a fatal blow to the Falcone family. Maroni's speculation was that the Godfather wouldn't go to great lengths to deal with the murderers. Although losing face might indeed shake his authority, the Godfather was indeed old. More important than face was the transfer of power. At this crucial juncture, if his attention was diverted, it could easily lead to major trouble. Falcone wouldn't risk losing more than he gained. Originally, Maroni had intended to use this incident to further undermine the Godfather's authority, and he even planned to impersonate someone from Metropolis to attack the Godfather's other businesses. But who knew that Schiller would be hospitalized on the spot and the gangsters would start hunting down the murderers like madmen? This really caught Maroni off guard. He originally thought that even if the Godfather went to hunt down those murderers, it wouldn't matter. As long as his attention was diverted, he would always find an opportunity to nibble away at the Falcone family's assets. Maroni was an audacious man. He didn't believe the Godfather had any unshakable power, and even if he did, he wanted to take a piece of him. But to his great surprise, this caused an uproar throughout Gotham City. with almost all the gangs starting to dig deep into the city. Amidst this commotion, Maroni was unsure of what to do. If he made a move now, would the Godfather go berserk and target him? He wanted to launch a sneak attack, not actually stand on the stage and fight the Falcone family. He couldn't win anyway. But if he doesn't take action, Maroni has already made some small moves. If he hasn't gained a foothold after this wave, the Godfather will settle scores later, and he will be completely finished. Just as he was struggling with this decision, to his surprise, the leader of the gang approached him. These guys are really unlucky. They were originally a group of terrorists operating in the Middle East, working as mercenaries for years. They were lured to the East Coast by another order, but ended up taking on another order in the metropolis. The employer was very generous, so they worked very hard. But who knew that Gotham was such a godforsaken place that even Satan couldn't help them? They were chased all over the city, beaten up, and the docks were under the control of the mafia families, so they couldn't get out. Left with no other choice, they had to cooperate with the enemy of their enemy. Even Gordon knew about Maroni's provocation of the Godfather, and these thugs certainly knew as well. They wanted to make a deal with Maroni. If he was willing to send them out of Gotham, they would take care of a problem for him before they left. Maroni initially didn't want to do this business, but he thought that these people had survived for so long under the siege of all the gangs in Gotham, so they must be quite capable. With such a group of assassins, he could do even more. Of course, Maroni wouldn't let this group assassinate the Godfather. It would be pointless, and they wouldn't do it anyway. So he set his sights on another link in the Godfather's newly developed industrial chain: the police. Maroni knew that the Godfather was making a considerable profit from this new industry chain. If this continued, the Falcone family's rule would remain very stable, and he would have no chance. Therefore, he had to destroy this industry chain and prevent the private prison model controlled by Falcone from continuing to provide him with so much profit. Police and judges are indeed an important part of this industry chain. After all, they need to make arrests legally and reasonably, and then conduct trials in order to put criminals into mental hospitals. Falcone went to great lengths to protect Schiller simply because he felt Schiller wasn't very capable of protecting himself. But since he provided the police with so much heavy firepower, he stopped paying attention to them. After all, anyone who dared to be a cop in a hellish place like Gotham must have some skills, and with enough weapons, protecting themselves shouldn't be a problem. Maroni set his sights on Gordon. Back then, in order to deal with the old Chief Victor, Maroni chose to support Good to take over. He didn't know much about this policeman at the time, and he felt that he didn't need to know much about him. Gotham's police were all the same, and it was perfectly normal for them to cooperate with gangs. Even the lowly clerks who served tea and water in the office had at least one gang behind them. Maroni figured that since he was the one who put Gordon in power, all he had to do was talk to him and he could get Gordon to work for him. Although it's dangerous to defect from the Godfather's supply chain to his side, now that we have this gang of thugs, if soft tactics don't work, we can try hard tactics. Gordon was overjoyed because his fiancée Barbara had finally arrived in Gotham. He met Barbara at the Chicago Police Training School, where he was a police probation officer and Barbara was an intern lawyer. They worked together on the same internship case, fell in love and got engaged. Then Gordon came to Gotham to take a job. Originally, they could only have a long-distance relationship because neither of them was financially well off, so they couldn't quit their jobs or even consider marriage and having children. But now that Gordon's financial situation had improved, they chose to come to Gotham to live together. On this day, Gordon went home from get-off work as usual. Although he hadn't been earning any extra money lately, Barbara had some savings. Together, their money was just enough to buy a nice apartment. He and Barbara had arranged to go see a house tonight, and if all went well, they could move into their new home within 2 weeks and no longer have to squeeze into this old rental apartment. He got home and heard Barbara come out. The aroma of food wafted from the kitchen. Gordon took off his coat and said, "What did you make? It smells so good. Your favorite roasted lamb ribs." Barbara blinked, and Gordon put his arm around her shoulder as they walked to the restaurant. "My friend gave me a good suggestion. I contacted the landlord of the Pelican neighborhood, and we'll go see the house there tomorrow. If we're satisfied, we can pay the deposit and move in immediately." "That's wonderful," Barbara said. "You know, my family isn't well off, and I've never lived in a luxury apartment. Does that house have a nursery? I really want a daughter, my little princess." "Of course, that's what I think too." Gordon kissed Barbara's cheek, and then the two sat down separately to eat. "I want my daughter to learn to dance. I originally wanted to be a dancer, but unfortunately I didn't have the opportunity." "If you became a dancer, you wouldn't know me anymore?" Gordon said with a laugh. I think our daughter should be free to do whatever she wants, whether it's learning to dance, learning to paint, or becoming a great lawyer like you. Come on, Barbara said with a helpless expression. This job is exhausting. I don't want her to become a lawyer. She'd better have an easier life. Dance is the same. It's just that you haven't learned it, so you're full of longing for it. I see the cheerleading students at Gotham University doing leg stretches every day. Some dance students have also complained that this industry is a young person's game, and it's easy to lose your job when you get older. You're really putting a lot of pressure on me. What if our children don't live a good life? Barbara asked. You have to have faith in her, and how she lives is her own choice. Even as a policeman in such a dangerous city as you? Oh, darling, Gordon said. Don't say that. I know you've told me before that your dream is to be a police officer because you were born in Chicago, a dangerous city, and a police officer saved your mother, so you want to be a police officer who upholds justice. But this job is really too dangerous. I've said it more than once. We can go back to my parents' home to live together. Even if we're a little short on money, it's okay. It's safer that way. Gordon sighed. He knew Barbara was right. With the money he was making, he could buy a villa in rural Arizona. He could then find a job as a police auxiliary officer and Barbara could be his legal advisor. That would be a comfortable and happy life. Even though Gordon knew Gotham was a horrible place, he still didn't want to leave. He thought, what's the point if the police can't be in the most dangerous places to protect people? Chapter 79, A Heart of Stone, Part 1. A rainy night in Gotham. The rain in Gotham is always fine and long, with a bone-chilling coldness. The rain lines look like a gray net under the lights, and when they get close to the ground, each raindrop splashes up tiny water droplets. The sound of an engine rose from the end of the dark alley, accompanied by the faint sound of water and the subtle creaking of tires over the uneven pavement. As the blinding headlights appeared at the back door of the police station, Gordon knew he was in trouble. A limousine pulled up in front of Gordon. He saw the reflection of a rifle barrel in the car window, and a man in the rearview mirror nodded at him. No one spoke, and the whole process was as quiet as a Gotham night. Gordon took a deep breath and reached for the pistol on his waist. Although the pistol had just been fitted with new parts, it did not give him any sense of security. In this city, the police could not obtain any law enforcement power with their guns, and they could not even protect themselves. A man in a black suit got out of the car and opened the door for Gordon. Gordon glanced at his watch. It was 9:12 p.m. He was going to miss dinner with Barbara again. Finally, Gordon got into the car. As the vehicle started, he looked out the window. The neon lights of the shop signs flashed by, leaving a trail of red and blue light. Raindrops hit the car window, blurring the lights into an indistinct halo. Gordon asked, "Who is the person I need to see?" "You'll see when you get there," the person in the passenger seat replied. As they drove onto a somewhat rugged road, the vehicle swayed a bit, and the headlights flickered on different buildings. Soon, they turned into an alley that Gordon had never been before. He knew that this should be in the East End, and on the most dangerous edge of the East End. He got out of the car, and the man in the black suit led him to the entrance of a mansion. Two men stood in front of the gate, each holding a gun. One of them came up, and Gordon put his hands together in front of his forehead. The man took the gun from his waist, searched him up and down, and after confirming that he had no weapons, Gordon followed the man who led him inside. The mansion was luxuriously decorated and brightly lit, but there weren't many people inside. Gordon went up to the second floor, and as soon as the person leading the way opened the door, Gordon saw a rather burly figure from behind. He knew that it was Sal Maroni, the newly promoted big boss of the East District. Maroni turned around. He wasn't handsome. He looked somewhat fierce, with a mouth that always turned down sharply, while his eyes always slanted upwards with a sinister air. He twirled the ring on his hand and said, "Sheriff, please sit down. I'm sorry to have invited you over tonight. I don't know what's wrong with gang members these days. You're all so polite. You seem more like police officers than I am." Gordon's reply was rude, and he didn't sit down as Maroni suggested, but stood up straight. Maroni's expression was ambiguous, but he didn't seem to mind Gordon's offense. He said, "I invited you here to talk business with you, the kind of business the mob always talks about. I don't do business with gangsters." "Oh," Maroni laughed. "That's a novel idea. I've heard some of you say that my offer wasn't enough, but I've never heard of anyone who didn't want to work with the mafia. That's the truth. I don't cooperate with any gangs." "Then why did you get involved in the Godfather's business?" Your field team must have made a lot of money off his private prison network, right? I'm just a cop. Fighting crime is a cop's duty, Gordon said. He was telling the truth. Even though he knew that the criminals he arrested were only bringing more revenue to the Godfather, his actions were indeed about arresting criminals. If this could bring him profit, that would be even better, but if not, Gordon would continue to do so. After all, he did the same thing when there was no business and he was the only one who did it. My conditions are very simple. You don't have to do anything. You just need to stall and find all sorts of reasons to prevent the field team from going out. Maroney spread his hands and said, "How simple! All you have to do is do nothing, and I will offer you a price that will satisfy you." Gordon said, "I can see that you've been imitating the Godfather. I've never met His Excellency Falcone, but I know that there are countless poor imitators of him in Gotham who think they are elegant, polite, and speak in a pretentious manner, even adopting an Italian accent like him. But that won't work, Mr. Maroney. You are not Falcone, and there will never be another Falcone in Gotham. At least for now, Gotham is the Godfather's Gotham, not yours." Maroney's face darkened completely because Gordon had spoken his mind. He was indeed imitating Falcone, or as Gordon said, too many people in Gotham were imitating the Godfather. Although they had never even attended secondary school, they still imitated Falcone, using all sorts of very elegant language to try and twist a short sentence into a long and complicated sentence with all sorts of complex grammar. They wore suits and bow ties, pinned flowers to their breast pockets, and carried pens instead of pistols, just like the Godfather. Falcone is like a benchmark in Gotham City. The Godfather's personal charisma is so strong that all the mob bosses imitate him, and Maroney is one of them. When you arrive in Gotham, you'll be very surprised. The gangs here don't hire a bunch of kidnappers to abduct you. Instead, they drive a black luxury car and silently arrive at your doorstep on a rainy night. Then, in a luxuriously decorated room, they sit behind a black desk, dressed in a suit, and speak to you politely. They didn't look like gangsters. They looked more like a group of old-fashioned nobles, all thanks to Falcone's influence. This was something that made Maroney feel ashamed, because he was different from the others. He felt that he had never succumbed to the power of the Godfather, and that he was destined to overthrow Falcone. But he had to admit that he had indeed been imitating the Godfather all along. Furthermore, his imitation was not accurate. Maroney was actually not suited to wearing suits at all. He lacked the refined demeanor of the Godfather, and even a well-tailored suit could not conceal his savagery. But Falcone represents the most glorious era of the Gotham City mob. Every move he makes bears the mark of that tumultuous time, this refined temperament from that golden age, and that commanding presence that seems to have everything under control, fascinates Maroney. He harbored a deep-seated malice towards the Godfather, wanting to take his place, but like everyone else in Gotham, he also held him in the highest esteem. Gordon looked at Maroney's silence and said, "You know what? Before I even stepped through that door, I knew it wasn't His Majesty the Godfather who invited me, even though you used his favorite car model and his most common way of inviting people." "Really? Why?" Maroney asked. "If it were His Excellency Falcone who invited me here today, I wouldn't be searched or have my gun confiscated. The Godfather doesn't really care whether I have a weapon on me when I meet him, because he's much more confident than you are." Maroney was almost losing his composure. Every word Gordon said was like a knife to his heart, and everything he said was true. When Falcone invites anyone over for a talk, he never disarms them, even if they are a notorious murderer. He dares to sit behind the table, less than 2 meters away, unarmed, and win their hearts with just words. But Maroney dared not. How could he dare let a well-trained veteran policeman with a gun come within 2 meters of him? He had absolutely no confidence. He had to be wary of Gordon suddenly attacking him, and he didn't even know why Falcone dared to do that. Why was the Godfather so confident that no one he saw would dare to lay a hand on him? Maroney never understood this question. In his view, if he made a mistake even once, all his efforts would be in vain under the gunshot, and he would never give anyone that chance. He felt his caution was justified, but that didn't stop him from feeling a sense of humiliation, as if he'd been defeated before the battle even began. He said to Gordon in a low voice, "Do you think your actions are wise? Constantly provoking me on my turf. Are you starting to drop the pretense?" Gordon asked him. "Your wording just now was no different from that of a street thug. You didn't use a single complicated word because you thought I saw through the truth, and there was no need to keep pretending." Maroney waved his hand, and a click sounded behind him as a bullet was chambered, echoing in the room. The man in the suit behind him was holding a shotgun and pointing it directly at Gordon. Gordon shook his head and said, "That's the difference between you and His Excellency Falcone. You called me here to talk business, but there's no such thing as killing someone if a deal falls through. You're still the gangster type. If I don't agree, you'll point a gun at me and force me to agree. So why did you bother sending a car and people to pick me up here? You might as well just find a group of kidnappers like the other gangs in the East District, tie me up in a basement, punch me twice, then point a gun at my head and ask me if I agree. If I don't agree, then shoot me in the arm." "That's enough," Maroney said, taking a deep breath and waving his hand. The man behind him lowered his gun. "You're smart," he said. "You know I don't want to lose to Falcone. Your intelligence saved your life, Sheriff Gordon. I can let you go tonight, but it's not because I'm imitating anyone, but because I'm mercifully giving you a chance to think things over. If you change your mind, you know where to find me." When Gordon emerged from the mansion, his shirt was almost completely soaked with cold sweat. Only he himself knew how dangerous it had just been. If he hadn't repeatedly used Falcone to provoke Maroney, stirring up Maroney's rebellious psychology, it would have been questionable whether he could have left the mansion unscathed. The cold wind of Gotham blew against him, and fine raindrops pattered on his face. He slowly walked back, thinking that he wasn't wrong. Maroney was far inferior to Falcone. He was already furious. If it had been Falcone who invited him tonight, putting aside whether Gordon's little tricks could anger the Godfather, even if he spoke rudely to Falcone, the Godfather wouldn't have refused to send him a car home. Thinking this, Gordon looked up at the Gotham night sky. Raindrops fell into his eyes. He wiped his face and thought that this trouble was probably far from over. Chapter 80, A Heart of Stone, Part 2. Gordon and Barbara had a fight when they got home, and Barbara waited for him until very late. She sat alone in the dark room, a cold dinner laid out on the table, a meal Barbara had carefully prepared to celebrate their upcoming purchase of their first home. Sadly, the most important person was missing from this dinner. Barbara knew Gordon was busy, but she also knew that Gordon was so busy not because he was incapable of doing his job, but because the place where he worked didn't need police at all. Barbara, who had been with Gordon all along, knew very well that with Gordon's abilities, he wouldn't have had to go through such a difficult time in any city other than Gotham. More importantly, Barbara also knew that even if Gordon worked so hard, it would be meaningless. He couldn't save this place. When Gordon returned, Barbara was sitting on the sofa, stroking a photograph. It was a picture they had taken after their internship, in which Gordon and she looked very young, almost like children. They were both under 20 at the time, and had only been dating for less than 2 months. They got drunk at a party and talked about their ambitions. Barbara's family situation was not good, and she wanted to earn money to improve the lives of her parents and brothers. Gordon was born into a middle-class family with some wealth. Because a policeman once saved his family, he dreamed of becoming a policeman who upholds justice since he was a child. Despite their different aspirations, they still fell in love, and even a long-distance relationship that lasted for several years did not diminish their feelings for each other. But that very night, it was as if all the emotions that had been building up for so long burst forth at once. Barbara sat on the sofa, silently shedding tears, while Gordon stood at the door without saying a word. It wasn't that he didn't want to comfort Barbara, nor that he could stand by and watch his beloved fiancée weep alone. But he knew what Barbara was going to say, and he also knew that he couldn't answer Barbara's question. Why did he have to stay in Gotham? Gordon is not a native of Gotham. He was born in Chicago. He was not from a poor background. On the contrary, he was a middle-class child who grew up in relative wealth. He is not a super genius. Most of his achievements come from his hard work. From his teachers and classmates to his fiancée with whom he spent every day, no one understood why Gordon would give up a promising future with the Chicago Police Department to come to this godforsaken place, Gotham, and stay for several years. Gordon did not achieve anything within the Gotham Police Department. His promotions have been incredibly slow. Several years have passed, and he's still just a team leader. He hasn't solved any major cases, and even when he contributes to some, the credit never goes to him, let alone anything like upholding justice or changing Gotham. But Gordon was as if he were bewitched. He insisted on staying there. All his former teachers and classmates always looked regretful when they talked about him. In their opinion, if Gordon had known a little more flexibility, his achievements would have been much greater than they are now. Gordon went over and hugged Barbara. She kept crying, but she didn't ask anything because she knew that Gordon had never answered the question she most wanted to ask. When faced with the choice between his police badge and his lover, Gordon has always remained silent. Gotham's nights are never short of weeping, but Barbara's weeping must be special. Few people here shed tears for their lovers. The warmth in their hearts isn't even enough to warm themselves, let alone cry out for something as ephemeral as love. Having witnessed too much crying in Gotham's nights, Barbara's sadness and tears made Gordon feel even worse. He felt like a murderer worse than those criminals. He thought that once he decided to live in this abyss, he should no longer expect people on the surface to look at him. Even if there were such people, their end would only be to shed tears for him, like the cold rain falling on him in the dead of night in Gotham. But those tears were ultimately shed in vain. Thousands of lovers' tears are like thousands of drizzles, unable to change this inflexible and stubborn rock. The next day, Harvey visited Schiller again, which surprised Schiller, as the lawyer was always very particular about etiquette and rarely showed up without an appointment. Harvey said, "Gordon came to me yesterday hoping I could find his fiancée a job as a legal counsel, preferably in a metropolitan area or another southern city. I noticed something was off about his mental state, which is why I came to see you. I feel that it's not just a simple argument between him and his fiancée. They've already bought a house and are even planning to have a few kids, but now Gordon seems to want to break up with Barbara. This is very strange." Schiller trusted Harvey's intuition, but when he called Gordon, his number went unanswered. When he called Gordon's police station, his colleagues told Schiller that the hard-working detective, who had been working overtime every day for years, hadn't come to work that afternoon. Schiller had a bad feeling, so he quickly contacted Gordon's partner, Batman. Last night, Gordon thought about it all night, and finally, the next morning, he broke up with Barbara. In order to get Barbara out of Gotham as soon as possible, he asked Harvey, a top lawyer, to find Barbara a new job, preferably one as far away from Gotham as possible. Gordon was just an ordinary person. The emotional shock of breaking up with his girlfriend of many years nearly drove him to a breakdown. At the police station, he couldn't concentrate on his work all morning, and by noon, when everyone had gone to lunch, the empty office made Gordon unable to stay any longer. He walked out of the police station in a daze, wanting only to find a place with more people to stay, so that he could stop immersing himself in that despairing sadness. But things didn't go as planned. Just as he had predicted, his troubles were far from over. Not long after he left, he realized someone was following him. Gordon regained some composure and wanted to get back to the police station as soon as possible, where there were heavily armed guards and it wouldn't be easy for anyone to break in. But his pursuers were cunning. When Gordon saw several menacing faces staring at him on the road ahead, he knew that continuing on would not end well. He only carried one gun, and although the magazine was full, the pistol's lethality was very limited. He could only rely on his familiarity with the terrain to turn right into the alley and hide in a blind spot around a corner. This action had no effect. Those who were following him clearly knew the terrain well, and when they saw Gordon turn right, they immediately followed. The footsteps outside the alley grew closer, and the sky gradually darkened. Gordon silently calculated the time in his mind. When the footsteps appeared at the entrance of the alley, taking advantage of the moment when the sky turned from dusk to darkness and people's vision was at its worst, Gordon fired a shot at the entrance of the alley. Seeing that his bullets missed, Gordon immediately abandoned his first plan. He knew that the opponent must be a well-trained assassin who would not be affected by his field of vision. He immediately holstered his gun and ran back. 2 gunshots rang out behind him. What surprised Gordon was that the gunshots had the muffled sound of a silencer. Gordon immediately realized that these people were not locals of Gotham. Gotham's hitmen don't equip their guns with silencers. It makes no sense. Nobody in Gotham reacts to gunshots anyway. It's like putting earplugs on a deaf person. With this in mind, Gordon devised a new plan. The pursuers were getting closer and closer, clearly having more stamina and explosive power than Gordon. Gordon ran to the end of the alley and then quickly climbed up an outer wall. Just as he reached the top of the wall, his pursuers arrived. It was the instant Gordon's movements faltered that Gordon was shot. He then tumbled down the wall and fell into the yard. The shot hit his arm but wasn't fatal. Gordon clutched his arm and kept running, shouting, "The Black Tower gang has made their move. They've opened fire. They've opened fire." The courtyard was the backyard of a nightclub. Upon hearing this, someone immediately rushed out, and the person following Gordon was surrounded by the gangsters. Just as he climbed to the top of the wall and was in a moment of immobility, he was hit by 3 or 4 bullets. Gotham's operating principle is, regardless of whether you can see them or not, regardless of who the other person is, shoot them first and talk to them only after they're down. But Gordon's crisis was not over. It was clear that he was being chased by a group of people. The first person he shook off was just an appetizer. Soon, as he ran through the alley and onto the road, he saw a car rushing towards him. It seems they had several plans, or perhaps they originally intended to use that person to drive Gordon onto the road and then run him over with a car. Gordon rolled to the right, and the car did not hit him, but a dark gun barrel protruded from the car. Gordon had barely regained his footing when he was shot again, this time in the back, and he let out a scream. However, because the shot was fired while driving at high speed, it didn't hit a vital spot. It was a graze. The intense pain overwhelmed Gordon, but his will to survive kept him running forward. The more pain he felt, the clearer Gordon's mind became. He knew that if he kept running like this, he would be caught up in just a few minutes. He endured the intense pain, clutching his chest tightly with one arm, while his other arm was bleeding profusely from the gunshot wound. Gordon followed the route he remembered and ran to the back door of an apartment building. The lock on the back door was broken and it was never properly closed. He pulled hard on the lock with one arm, but the wound on his chest made every movement excruciatingly painful, and Gordon's breathing became heavier and heavier. Soon, the door was pulled open a crack, and Gordon, who was neither tall nor strong, was just able to squeeze through the gap. Once inside, he didn't stop. Instead, he climbed up a short flight of stairs in 2s and 3s at a time, tore open the window of the nearest corridor, and then desperately climbed up. He closed the window and hid on a protruding roof on the second floor. Hearing the sound of the door being rammed from below, Gordon gritted his teeth and slid down the eaves, landing straight on an awning. Fortunately, no blood was left when he slid down on his back. After falling onto the awning, Gordon used his last bit of strength to roll over and let the garbage bags below cover him. After a while, he heard footsteps in the building disappear. The other person hadn't found him and seemed to have left. Gordon lay amidst a pile of garbage, feeling the heavy stench of blood with every breath he took. The bullet had wounded his lung. His arm was already numb from blood loss, but he could still clearly feel the engagement ring on his middle finger. His body heat was gradually merging with the cold metal ring. He recalled the incredulous and heartbroken look on Barbara's face when he told her he wanted to break up. He thought Barbara was right. He was a fool, an incurable fool, a fool who would never learn to be flexible, a fool who deserved to die alone. Gordon felt an overwhelming chill, followed by a surge of warmth from within his body. Blood from the fall, which had broken his forehead, flowed down his forehead and into his eyes, turning his vision crimson and obscuring it with a layer of black mist. Soon, it started raining again in Gotham. This rain was nothing special, just like every nightly rain in Gotham, fine and cold. Gordon's consciousness gradually faded, like a trapped beast lying in an abyss. The tears of lovers falling from the sky could not save his life from slipping away, but the rain that reminded him of his lover's tears stirred a more resolute emotion within him, he thought. If he was born an inflexible fool, he would rather exhaust all his vibrant life in this quagmire. His heart as hard as a stubborn rock. Let him die here alone. Let the rotting wind blow over his withered bones until it takes away all traces of his life. And then, in the face of this endless darkness, let his last wisp of soul still resist stubbornly, refusing to kneel down. Gordon thought, let him stay here, fighting against 10,000 men, until dawn.